Holy cow, major and exciting Mario Kart World news just dropped. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have much to discuss surrounding Mario Kart World for Nintendo Switch 2. We have new footage from the Today app that shows us more about the missions mode in this game, but then on top of that, Nintendo put out parts 1 through 4 in one fell swoop the entire Asset Developer series for Mario Kart World. It's a bit overwhelming here. There's a lot to sift through. Reading through it all, there's actually some pretty big deals that are mentioned about this game, including some details that might hint at even more about this game. So we're going to be diving into that today. But before going forward, let me point out, as of last night, the channel has reached its goal of 50,000 subscribers. Thank you all for the support, but this is just the beginning. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would still be appreciated. So for the first thing we'll discuss today is this footage here. This is footage from the Today app showing off another mission and missions mode for Mario Kart World, and as you see from the title of the mission, move through a herd of cows. I really appreciate the pun. As you see here, we're racing as cow through a herd of cows in an obstacle course for this missions mode. You do not have a lot of time, and so this shows even more variety to the missions mode, and we likely can expect a lot more. But also notice something here. When you fail a mission, you have the option to retry by clicking on your left stick. And I actually think this is an important quality of life feature. We were not sure how missions would work in this game. There was a possibility that when you finished a mission, or if you failed a mission, you would have to drive back to the P-switch to start again. But no, they've offered the option to just restart or retry immediately, which is a nice quality of life feature. I definitely appreciate it. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal, I would argue. And now let's move on to this big deal Mario Kart World as a developer interview here. Now, this is a huge thing. If I were to read through this entire thing, it would be an hour to 2 hour long video. I'm not going to do that. However, I will have it linked in the description below for you to read through it yourself. It's an interesting read, listening to what the developers have to say about this overall project here. But it will be getting into some pretty big points of interest. For example, to scroll through, Yabuki, we were thinking about what to do for the next Mario Kart game even during the development of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and we began prototyping in March 2017. It was at the end of that year when we officially started work on it as a project. I felt that in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe we were able to perfect the formula that we've been following in the series up to that point, where players race on individual courses. That's why, this time, we wanted the gameplay to involve players driving around a large world, and we began creating a world map like this, as you see here. And so I find this interesting for a couple different reasons. One, this is them telling us that they've been working on this game since 2017. It's been 8 years of development here, which is intense. But also, they felt that Mario Kart 8 was a perfection of the formula, which I totally agree with, so they had to find ways to continue to evolve. And driving around in a vast interconnected world, I think, is definitely the right decision in terms of evolving the series. Something else very interesting that came out early from this interview that may settle a long 8-year debate. Yabuki. If the idea had just been to add more courses, then I think we could have called it Mario Kart 9. But that wasn't our approach this time. We wanted to take the series to the next level. So we decided to drop the numbering this time and go with a completely new title, Mario Kart World. So, we'd already added Mario Kart World to the concept art from the early stages of development. And as you see here, we can see some early concept art of Mario Kart World where they're already titling it Mario Kart World. And now these are different depictions of the world, and it's interesting to look at based off what we know what the game is actually going to be now. But yeah, the big takeaway here is that if this game wasn't going to be called Mario Kart World, it would have been called Mario Kart 9. This is Mario Kart 9. Mario Kart Tour, they do not consider to be Mario Kart 9. It is a side project. And so the debate that we've had for so many years on whether the next Mario Kart game would be Mario Kart 10 or 9, it's Mario Kart 9. So there you go. But this next part I also find to be rather fascinating. Ishikawa. But I was happy in terms of the visual design because it would give off more of the lively, bustling feeling. I felt like the 12 players we had previously was a lot, but as Yabuki-san said, once players spread out, the course starts to look sparse. and the visuals give off a sort of lonely feel. So, I thought that 24 players would be better because there'd be more interaction between various players. That said, it was quite challenging once we got going and the volume of design work increased, but it was worth it. Sato. When we were developing for the Nintendo Switch system, Switch 1, it was difficult for us to incorporate everything we wanted, so we were always conscious of what we were giving up in return. We discussed things like toning down the visuals, lowering the resolution, and we even considered dropping the frame rate to 30 FPS in some cases. It was a tough situation. And then here, what do you decide to give up on in the end? Sato, well, Jikumaru, we couldn't give up on anything. Laughs, everyone, laughs. Yabuki, we worked on it while kicking the can down the road in terms of deciding what to give up on. So at some point, we knew that it was going to get messy. But as we decided to release Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, we thought that would give us a bit more time to continue development. That's when the conversation of moving it to the Nintendo Switch 2 system came up, and this suddenly opened up a bunch of possibilities on what we could do. It was truly a ray of hope. So here we have confirmation of a theory of mine that Mario Kart World started off development as a Switch 1 title. The Switch was a long generation. They did consider having a dedicated new Mario Kart game for the Switch console. But as things progressed, ultimately they decided to save this for Switch 2, and I find this fascinating because I've also debated that Donkey Kong Bonanza might also have been a title that started off as a Switch 1 title, because we have heard rumors that the Odyssey team was working on a Donkey Kong game shortly after the development of Odyssey, and it looks like those rumors are true, but that was years ago. And so it may be the case that the titles we're seeing now, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, also games like Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon Legends ZA, all these titles started off as Switch 1 titles. So it now has me more curious on what we're going to see with the next wave of Switch 2 games from Nintendo that are developed from the get-go as Switch 2 titles. Continuing on to part 2. Sato, when we were developing for Nintendo Switch, we often worried whether we could find the right balance between planning and performance. Of course, the Switch system's performance is sufficient for developing different kinds of games that if we had included everything we wanted to in this game's vast world, then it wouldn't have run at 60 FPS and would have suffered from constant frame rate drops. I think there were a lot of people on the team who were worried about whether we could really manage it. But once we decided to release this game on Switch 2, we expected our worries to evaporate all at once. I remember being overjoyed when I discovered we could express even more than we'd originally set out to. So what's clear here is that if this game had come out as a Switch 1 title, it would not have fully realized the vision they had for this game. It would have suffered in a variety of ways. So this game that needed to be a Switch 2 title to appropriately realize the full vision for this game. And I'm focusing on this part right here because I don't want the point of this game starting off as a Switch 1 title to take away from how impressive this game is. This game is impressive in a variety of ways. As Ishikawa says here, I recall the team lead for Terrain telling us that we need to keep context in mind. Context is so important in so many different places in life, I would argue. Each course was built around its own unique and distinctive concept. So if the landscape between the courses was barren, then it would feel like the world was just divided into chunks. That's why it's important to establish a context that connects them in a way that feels natural while making use of contrast to create surprises. For example, we thought it would be good if Mario Bros. Circuit, you could keep driving down a wide road like Route 66, a popular road in real life, the scenery would gradually thin out, while up ahead you'd see a landmark that resembles Monument Valley, and the road would ultimately connect to a big city. And so as you see here with this footage they shared from the game, they had this focus on really thinking about how you transition from one point to another. There was a lot of thought that went into the tracks, but not just the tracks, how these tracks bleed into each other, and how it's all a natural fit. This shows just how much attention to detail, how much thought and sophistication there truly is to this massive world. And that attention to detail also goes for the music as well. Asahi. First, we created music for the courses like we've always done before, and then thought about what to do for the roads outside the courses. We decided to have two different kinds of music depending on how you are playing. For the Knockout Tour mode, we started off by simply trying to connect the course themes, but that approach didn't work well. It ended up sounding weird because the tracks have different tempos and beats. So, we decided to find a way to end each of the course themes even though they are connected by the route. Video game music often plays on a loop, and in this game too. The same music keeps playing if you're driving laps around a course. But for Knockout Tour, as you get closer to the next course, the music transitions to the outro, so the theme ends nicely. We also create a new intro for each course theme which starts to play shortly before you reach the gate, building excitement. Then, as you actually pass through the gate, it changes to the theme of the course you've entered. By repeating this, it feels like a medley is playing along to you live, creating a sense of immersion. I just love what is being explained here. We've already heard quite a few tracks in Mario Kart World, and there's a lot here, but just reading through what Asahi has to say about how they really focused on how the music transitions as you explore through these different tracks, it just further goes to show how much attention to detail goes into this game and how they want it all flow seamlessly. Continuing though, for other modes like Free Roam, we prepared lots of music in addition to the course themes and made so the game would automatically select the right track depending on the situation. During development, we called this the Jukebox. For this, we created lots of arrangements of music composed for past Super Mario and Mario Kart games. I wonder if this Jukebox will be made available separate from the exploration of the world, where you can just pick from a vast arrangement in a menu of some kind. It's possible, maybe something add later on, we'll see. But here, Asahi also says, altogether, over 200 for the Jukebox. These are all brand new arrangements, and we also did live recordings. We prepared pieces from quite a variety of musical genres. I believe those who are well versed in video game music, as well as those who aren't, will enjoy listening to them. So there's going to be a vast amount of amazing music in this game, and that just has me even more excited. This Jukebox music, by the way, the 200, is for the Free Roam. There's still music for the Grand Prix and Knockout Tour that's separate, so that's extremely interesting, but there's even more to this which we'll touch on in a bit here. So as we see here, we see some concept art showcasing one single location in Mario Kart World under different times of day and weather conditions. And so this is interesting because they talk about how they actually designed this world with a lot in mind, not just how you go at it from different angles and different modes, but also different times of day and different types of weather. So there's actually a lot of variety in these same locations. Jikumaru. We designed it so that a day in the game passes in around 24 minutes. You easily get a sense of how time passes in the game since it happens faster than in real life, but the time doesn't progress evenly, does it? Ishikawa. At first, we made the color of the sky gradually change over time, but in many cases we consider the time and scenery together. For example, we wanted players to be able to experience the desert at night. In this case, when there's a particular scene we really want players to see, we didn't think such a feature would work, as players might drive through that location at that rather bland time between evening and night. So, I discussed this issue with the programmers, and we decided to focus on the most appealing times of day and dramatically shorten the transitions between day and night. So this actually explains the very quick transitions we've seen in the gameplay so far. They did this because they really want to highlight the parts they find most appealing. So I think that's a very interesting design choice there. Going back to this idea of the Jukebox though, Asahi says, the Jukebox feature will have you racing towards Bowser's Castle while listening to Bowser's Road from Super Mario 64, or going for a nighttime spin while soaking in the Rainbow Road theme from Super Mario Kart. During the daytime, various bright and cheerful tracks play. In the evening and at night, the arrangements are more chilled. We recorded a band arrangement for the staff credits theme from Mario Kart DS in a style that fits this new game, and I personally was really moved when I listened to it driving around during the game's evening scenes. You can enjoy it even without knowing the original tracks, but I think someone with fond memories of playing various Super Mario games will feel a wave of nostalgia listening to these tunes as they drive around. And as a huge Super Mario fan, this fills me with so much excitement for this game. The thought that they are changing around the music depending on the environment and the time of day. the fact that they are remixing so many different tracks from the Mario series, not just Mario Kart, but the Super Mario series like Mario 64, Mario Galaxy. There's going to be so much to enjoy from a music perspective. The nostalgia is going to be rampant throughout this game, but in a new, refreshing way, also adding to the overall atmosphere to the varying environments and situations this world has to offer. Now, something else to discuss is that the reason why they came up with the idea for wall riding and rail riding is because they knew they needed to incorporate a lot of straight roads on top of the bends. The bends make racing interesting, but because of this interconnected world that is so vast, they need to have straight roads so they can get to these bigger points of interest with some more speed. And so they need to find a way to make driving straight more interesting, and one of those ways is this new trick system that allows you to race in straight paths in varying exciting different ways with a variety of possibilities. Wall riding, rail riding, doing jumps, finding different shortcuts. There's even a point where they reference that players may find ways that they didn't even think were possible themselves, the developers. As Yabuki says here, I think these tricks will really give players a chance to use their imagination as they come up with ideas like, I'm gonna drive up that wall, let me use that pillar, or can I ride that guardrail or power line? I love what this is. It's really focusing on the creativity and appealing to that curiosity of the player so they can explore and experiment with so many different things. This also goes back to the missions mode, where they're going to teach us how to do different things in the world and how it's exploring more and more and helping us to realize even more things that we can do in this game. And I also think it's interesting that the development of this game and the decision to make it open world happened in 2017, immediately after the incredible success for Breath of the Wild. And then we also consider how they have this level of interactivity with this environment and how they're appealing to that curiosity of the player. These feel like similar design concepts that we saw from Breath of the Wild. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. But something else I find interesting, what Yabuki says here. In this game, you don't just race on the courses. The areas between courses are also used for racing. So it's as if there are courses spread out all over the world, and if you were to add up all the possible variations, it would easily exceed 100. So this whole notion that Mario Kart World has a minimal amount of tracks because they went for the open world, I don't think is fair in the slightest. As they point out here, there are over 100 easily, so far more than 100 possible variations for you to go about racing in this world throughout the courses. There's a lot to this. There's the different modes, and all the tracks are different in these different modes in various ways, as we've discussed in prior videos. Even in free roam, we have found paths and tracks that are not in Knockout Tour or Grand Prix mode. So there's a lot of possibilities, and even in the Mario Kart World Direct, they mention for Versus Race, you can create some other different variations for the races. In part 3, they show off some cool concept art here, and they talk about how they were designing all these different costumes in these different environments and really kind of just fleshing out just the variety to this game. But they also were thinking about food. Mario ingests mushrooms, and so this idea evolved into creating a whole bunch of food for Mario and the other Mario Kart World characters to ingest. And you see from this art here, there's a lot of different things they were thinking about, and eventually these ideas merged into the food item that you can eat during gameplay, which led to the Yoshi chains. Sato. Food is sold at Yoshi's fictional drive-thru restaurants located all over the game's world. Yoshi and his friends make food inspired by each area. And I find this part kind of funny because Yoshi, there's a meme of Yoshi getting arrested or being up for arrest for tax evasion. But Yoshi now owns this line of restaurants, of drive-thru restaurants throughout the Mario Kart world. So perhaps Yoshi can launder some money so he can further evade taxes and perhaps also avoid getting arrested. This might be just another little bit of fun meme headcanon lore to Yoshi's tax evasion adventures. This next part I find to be rather exciting. Yabuki. That's right, in previous games in the series, cow was part of the scenery or an obstacle on one of the courses. But when we were working on an early version of a course in this game set on a ranch that players can drive through, this sketch came up, and as you see, Cal is driving a truck here. And then Ishikawa here says, each new Mario Kart game features new characters to race with, but since we added so many to the previous game, we wondered where we could go from there. And then one of the designers came up with the silly sketch of Cal cruising along, and I thought to myself, this is it. So that's when we realized the course surroundings actually contained a lot of untapped resources. And here we see this beautiful art of Mario Kart World in Moo Moo Meadows, and I just love how it looks. But what Jikumaru says right here I find to be very curious. It was thanks to the introduction of various NPC drivers that the idea to have Kamek appear as an item was born. When Kamek casts a spell, the racers are transformed into playable NPCs, so one by one they might all turn into a cow mid-race. I think it turned out to be a unique item that has never been seen before. In fact, Cow is a character who's inspired a lot of different ideas, including obstacle characters like Camel and Giraffe. So I find this interesting, because we've already seen that they're adding all these different obstacle characters in the game, and these obstacle characters are playable. But we've already talked about in the past how there are still obstacle characters, which might mean there are still more playable characters that we haven't seen shown off yet. And here they're talking about how Camel and Giraffe are similar to Cow. Cow led to the creation of Camel and Giraffe, so I now wonder, will Camel and Giraffe also become playable? I think there's a strong chance here. But then on top of that, they also talked about how they introduced Cal and these obstacle characters because they weren't sure where they could go from the roster they had in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Which I find interesting because there are still characters in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that have not been added to Mario Kart World. So maybe these characters, there is also a plan for them to be added at some point. Either they're already in the game and we simply have to unlock them, or they will be made available as either free or paid DLC down the road. So they also show off this footage here to illustrate how the karts interact with the different environments quite differently. They put a lot of detail into the suspension work and the give and the bounce, and how the tires will work in dirt or on asphalt and in different areas. And so there's a lot of attention to detail here, which is the overall theme of this game. So much thought has gone into everything. They even talk about racing on the waves. Sato, yes, since you drive on water, we put a lot of effort into the wave graphics too. Not just how they look. Our up-and-coming programmers also implemented simulations, such as ripples spreading when something drops in the water, or waves appearing after vehicles pass through. They made it possible to create waves on demand. This game has enemy characters that create waves when they attack, so we were able to incorporate players jumping on those waves into the gameplay. Jukumaru, racing on water is something this game has in common with the Wave Race 64 game, which is interesting because the Wave Race series has a lot that is focused on simply the waves themselves and how you interact with the wave. That's what makes that racing game so unique. And they've incorporated a little bit of that feel into Mario Kart World. It's not just, hey, it's water and racing through feels the same. It feels and looks very different. Even Ishikawa here talks about, that's right, when it came to the jumping action, Jikumaru-san, you were very particular about the white caps of the waves, right? And then here Jikumaru says, you noticed that. If you want an exhilarating jump on a wave, you need to be able to see the crest of the wave to gauge the timing of your jump. But with regular wave visuals, it's hard to tell where the crest of the wave is. So that's why I asked for white foam or white caps to be added to the crests. So this just further goes to show how much they're putting into this game and how much we can do even on just the waves in Mario Kart World. And there was something else confirmed during this interview in part 4. Ishikawa. As a designer, I started this project wondering, can we really make all of this? But looking back on it, this huge challenge allowed us to have fun creating lots of different things with close attention to detail. Notice how they say attention to detail, and I've been bringing up attention to detail so much with this game, not just in this video, but in prior videos as well. In previous Mario Kart games, the courses were separated and could only be viewed one by one, but now they look different depending on the angle, time of day, and mode you are playing. We've packed a lot of details into them. In fact, even for a single road sign, there's a relationship between that sign and another sign a little further away. Lots of elements went into creating a continuous world, so we hope you'll enjoy taking a breather between races and partake in some free roam to discover new things. By the way, this game's road sign designs are also available as stickers you can stick onto your vehicle. So be sure to collect your favorites and have fun equipping them for races and free roam mode. So as you see here, the different stickers, you can get these by exploring the world of Mario Kart. That's even more to do in this game. People were theorizing this and now it's been confirmed. But this overall point sort of illustrates just how much goes into this game. There's so much to find and explore within the open world. The missions mode gives you more to test out and do in this world. There's so much variations to the tracks we can explore in free roam and also race through in versus beyond just what we can find in Knockout Tour and Grand Prix, which also function differently from each other, and there are changes and shifts throughout the tracks in these different modes. And so there's just so much thought and work put into this game. Mario Kart World's a huge deal. This looks to be by far the most well thought out and advanced Mario Kart game ever. And I'll close out with what Yabuki-san says here. That's right, this game will lead the new generation. Mario Kart World is the launch title for Nintendo Switch 2, and I think, yeah, it is going to lead this new generation. It is exciting. I am so thrilled for what's to come in just a few short weeks. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.